上拿的呢。那个手机都静开音啊，别忘了。
The Xinjiang Uygur Autonomous Region celebrates its 65th anniversary this year. The region has undergone tremendous changes in recent years, with 2 million jobs created between 2014 and 2019 alone. From China's perspective, Xinjiang's transformation is a story of much-needed socio-economic development. Outside observers, however, see the region in different terms, and stories have appeared in some Western media about issues like human rights and religious freedom, as well as criticism of Xinjiang's network of vocational education and training centers. So what is the reality? Today, we are joined by 3 Xinjiang residents from diverse ethnic backgrounds who will show us Xinjiang through their own eyes. They are connecting with us at Yema International in Urumqi now. As we can see, they are in the traditional Kazakh yurt with the local ethnic decoration. So let me briefly introduce our guests for this special discussion. They are Dilraba Tilak, a postgraduate from Xinjiang Normal University. Welcome. And Zhanghao Tian, MIA candidate at Columbia University, volunteering now in Altai. And also we have Ma Xin, who is a Kazakh, founder of Galtai Gallery and the Schwarzman Scholar. We are also joined by a number of journalists and experts from both China and abroad. We have Mustafa Haider Said, Executive Director from Pakistan China Institute, and Zun Ahmed Khan, Visiting Fellow, Belt and Road Strategy Institute at Tsinghua University, and Ganbar Nadari, columnist for Keihan International, and Liu Yunyuan, Associate Executive Editor and Chief Commentator from Beijing Review, and Wang Jiang, Postdoctoral Researcher, Institute of Law at Chinese Academy of Social Sciences. So welcome to the show, welcome to the discussion. So we'll start with our 3 special guests from Xinjiang to tell their stories, what's Xinjiang like in their own eyes. Shall we say lady first? We'll start with Dilraba, please.
Hello guys, I'm Dilraba Tilak. I'm from Xinjiang Urumqi. I am basically a postgraduate student right now. I'm graduated from my college degree from 2 years ago. Actually, once I finished my high school, I went to Beijing for my college degree, and I stayed there for 5 years. But after the graduation, I came back to my hometown, and then I got married, and I got a kid. And then after that, I realized I should do some further studying, and then I went to do my postgraduate degree. Now I'm studying it.
Thank you. Next, shall we start with Hao Tian?
Okay, my name is Zhanghao Tian, and now I'm a volunteer in Altai Prefecture, Xinjiang Uygur Autonomous Region. And before, I was a student in Peking University, majoring in history, Spanish, and economics. And also, I'm a gap year student in Columbia University in the city of New York. And I think due to my commitment to Xinjiang, I chose to come here and to defer my enrollment in the United States to start my volunteer program here.
So next, Ma Xin, please.
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Ma Xin, and I'm the founder of Galtai Gallery, the first international art center and contemporary art gallery in Xinjiang. I was born and grew up in the northern part of Xinjiang, ethnic Kazakh, and I went to Beijing for my undergraduate back to 2012. And over the past few years, I traveled, worked, lived in different cities around the world, and finally decided to moving back to Xinjiang in 2018 and founded Gaotai. So now we represent artists from not only Xinjiang, but also far west part of China to the rest of the world, and introduce the modern and contemporary Xinjiang. Thank you. Very nice to join the panel.
Thank you, Marcin. So basically the panel is open, the floor is open to questions. So we have a group of journalists and experts from, different parts of the world. If you have any questions, go ahead, please, and ask them. Anything interesting you the most? Shall we start? Let me see. Yuan Yuan?
Hi, thank you for having me. First of all, I want to ask Tian, which province do you come from, and why do you develop an interest in Xinjiang, and why do you go to Xinjiang?
Yeah, that's a good question, and my parents always ask me that. Actually, before I am from Beijing, the capital of the Republic, and actually I traveled around 60, 70 countries around the world during my college, and I think I know a little about the world, but actually I think after my graduation, I think I have to know more about my own country, especially the West. Before, I didn't have many knowledge about this region, and now I'm here to know my brothers and sisters from different ethnic groups, especially the Uyghurs, the Kazakhs. Yeah, that's my commitment. That's the reasons why I come here.
Yeah, for those who are not familiar with the Chinese situation, China is really a large country. For a lot of people living in China, actually, they have, I would say the majority of them have never visited Xinjiang, and know very little about Xinjiang, even for us living inside China, because it's so large. For example, if you fly to Xinjiang from Beijing, it takes at least 5 hours, and with time differences, and not to mention, people who are from the other parts of the world. So thank you, Yuan Yuan. Zoom, do you have any questions?
Yes, of course. Firstly, thank you for organizing this panel. I come from Pakistan. One of our other co-panelists here also comes from Pakistan, and we share the border with Xinjiang as well. I think the culture is similar, and at the same time, I feel like I know what it feels like to be misrepresented by especially Western mainstream media. So I wanted to ask either any of you who would like to answer, when you hear stories about Xinjiang that in your experience are very detached from the reality, what do you think you can do or you are already doing to remove certain misconceptions? And how do you think people like us who are trying to portray the true image about Xinjiang, how can we facilitate that journey, if there's anything that can be done?
It's a tough question.
I hope it's not broad, yeah. But okay, so let's start with how do you feel like your life can, your experience can portray the true image about Xinjiang? Maybe small things that you feel. Maybe you can post or you can talk about your experience more openly with people outside who don't know what it's like to be there.
Mm-hmm.
I think the most convenient way is to just follow my Instagram stories, and you can know the true story, the true image about the region, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Joraba,
good way.
Yeah.
Anything to add?
As a local person, I think what you guys said, you were so right. I think people basically don't know much about my hometown. Like, they just know something that what the media said or what some very small part of group saying. I think that's not the whole image of my hometown, and I think I can be the characteristic person that coming out of my hometown, because I have a lot of friends like me. Like, we are so hardworking, we are so into our hometown that we literally so like even if I find a job in Beijing, actually it's a big city, everybody asks me like, why do you come back here? You did a good job, you went to a big city, and why do you come back here? And actually there are better chances waiting for you there. But I came back still because I can feel that there are bright future waiting for me there back in my hometown. And I can't express it very accurately to you, but I can see this from the eyes of my people. I can see the future from my people because we are the human being actually around me, like not something unreal, like we are the real person, yeah, not the media or something. This is the things that I'm seeing right now. So basically I would say maybe I can be the one that telling people like, oh, I'm the different, maybe not in a very special way, but in a very ordinary way. Like we are those people that having the same life, you know, just graduate, getting married, having kid, and living a good life there. And my daughter, yeah, my daughter's 1 year old now, and of course I'm gonna make her stay there, of course, and I'm gonna make her to learn different cultures like me, learn different languages like me, and in this week we can learn a lot of things, not just the way that you're living is different doesn't mean you need to live the same or different life, I guess. Yeah.
So dear Rabba, you mentioned about, you know, the 1 year old daughter. So you talk about her learning different languages. So what are the languages you plan, you know, have your daughter to learn?
Chinese first, and of course my mother language, Uyghur, and then English. Yeah, the basic three language, of course. Yeah.
Multilingual. So Marcin, just following Zoon's question, you know, like, do you experience, you know, different stereotypes about Xinjiang or about, say, Kazakh people? Like at the very beginning, before the show started, I mistaken you as Han people. You are actually Kazakh.
Yeah. I think, yeah, there are definitely many like stereotype in the international media on Xinjiang as a region. So I think for your questions about like what we're doing like to change the situation in Xinjiang, like I found in the gallery the time that I found there is a huge gap between how I view my hometown and how other people, even within China or outside of China, thinking about Xinjiang. So what we're doing today, I think, is like having more conversations and introduce the culture and the art to the rest of China and also to the international audience and see like what's the place we are living and the Xinjiang in our people who physically here thinking of. So yeah, that's basically what I'm doing. And also the second part of your question, you asked like, it's appreciable that you're saying that what people can do outside like to more Xinjiang. And the answer I always tell my friend is that you should come, like find a holiday time and physically visit Xinjiang and follow us to the south and north and having this type of immersed conversation with the local people. I think that definitely would help outsiders to understand this place better. Thank you.
Well, Mr. Saeed from Pakistan, do you have any questions for the three of them?
I have a few comments, actually. And,
go ahead, please.
It's very nice to see that the narrative of Xinjiang is coming from people who are in Xinjiang. I think that is the most important thing about this conversation. Hats off to CGTN for organizing this, because what we are seeing is that there are many other volunteers who are outside of China and who are outside of Xinjiang and who are more than happy to speak on behalf of the Xinjiang people. And I think that is where the problem lies. The people of Xinjiang and those people who are inside Xinjiang have to speak on behalf of Xinjiang. So that is a very important thing, and I hope this continues. Secondly, I had the privilege of visiting Urumqi so many times, and I was in the Grand Bazaar last year, and I saw, you know, I wish I could share the video, it was so full of joy. There was Kyrgyz, Tajik, Uyghurs in the Grand Bazaar dancing together, and right next to where they were dancing, there was a naan shop. You know, the local naan, the local bread shop.
Exactly.
Yeah,
we call it the same, yeah.
Yeah, they call it the same.
Local
and
bread.
there was what we in Pakistan call a tandoor, and the guy, he was a local Uyghur in a Uyghur dress, and he was making the most delicious bread, which was so unique.
Yeah.
And I told people in Pakistan we should follow this and preserve our culture like they are doing in Xinjiang. And then in Xinjiang, I had the pleasure of going to Kalamai. The Karamai, it's the English name, and Kalamai is the Chinese name. It means oil, black oil. It has a lot of oil. So in Kalamai, which is a small city, there was a night bazaar, and there were handicrafts of local people displayed at night. My point is that what the three guests sitting in Yama International, which I've had the pleasure of staying in multiple times, is a part of the story. There is so much to Xinjiang, there's so much culture, there's so much art, and there's so many interesting stories that we have to tell. And I think what we need to encourage is to have more people like the three amazing people who are sitting in front of us in Yama International. There are millions of more people like them, to bring them outside of their comfort zone in the media and let them tell the story of Xinjiang. Because they are the true spokespersons of Xinjiang. People in other capitals of the world have no right to speak about Xinjiang. It's like you and I starting to speak about people in Texas. We can't speak about people in Texas. We aren't sitting in Texas. Same about Xinjiang. The people who are sitting in Yama International, people who are sitting in Xinjiang are the true spokespersons and representatives of Xinjiang. So I think we have to take their views seriously.
Well said, Mr. Saeed. And also we have Mr. Nadari from Iran. Any questions, any comments about the stories of the three young people?
Well, thanks for having me on this program. Well, your guests talked about how they were able to travel inside China and, of course, abroad for study and work. My question is this, because some fake mainstream media outlets in the West are claiming that Xinjiang is a concentration camp, that people are not allowed to travel freely. My question is this: when you traveled to Beijing, or even when you decided to leave the country and study abroad and come back to China, were you mistreated for your decision just because you were from Xinjiang? This is my question. How did the authorities in China treated you when you decided to go to study abroad and when you decided to come back? Any of the guests?
I'd like to take the question. Sure.
Okay, go ahead.
So I went to Beijing in 2012, as I mentioned previously, and after I finished my college, I actually went to Dubai for a year and working as a junior consultant there for the government agency. And then I actually also traveled around the whole Middle East region and studied in both Geneva and the States. So I think from my personal experience that I haven't encountered that many difficulties while traveling abroad or within the China. But I would say that definitely with what we see, the anti-terrorism policy and so on, there is a policy that people, when they're traveling, probably compared to other provinces, they might need to go through this type of process. But I don't say that there is a problem or it's very complicated for people to getting through their ability to travel within China. So that's for me.
Mm-hmm. So a follow-up question about that is, Maxing, you mentioned about people should visit Xinjiang so they can gain a first-hand experience, about what Xinjiang is really like, what the lives of local people are like over there. Now, let me ask you a question. Probably many people, have no access to Xinjiang because of whatever reasons. It's so far away, as I said. Yeah. Even within China, it's difficult probably to plan a trip to Xinjiang because it takes 2 weeks or even longer to visit Xinjiang, such a large place. And also, you mentioned about terrorism, etc. Is it safe to visit Xinjiang?
Well, I think it's very safe.
Anyone else can answer the question?
Yeah, if you...
Sure.
Well,
it's super safe here.
Yeah, a few days ago, I just asked one of my Uyghur friends in Ili Kazakh Autonomous Prefecture and whether or not it's safe to walk around on the streets at midnight. Mm-hmm. And she answered me that even you wear a bikini, there will be no problem for you to walk around. So she believes that Xinjiang is a safest place for travelers. For me, I have the same opinion.
Yeah, even for the residents here, for everyone, I would say.
Exactly.
Yeah, you can say you don't need to worry about like sneaking out in the middle of the night and you're worrying about your purse getting stolen, or maybe you robbed on the streets or something would happen to you accidentally. No, there's no worry like that. I would say you can go out in the middle of the night and you can trust the police on the streets. There will be police to protect you, and you know this. And for our girls, I would say I have no worry to go out in the middle of the night maybe. I think that's what this sense of, we'll say, safety, yeah.
Yeah, free and safe.
Yes.
I have to add a little bit about, something personal. Like I met a friend from the United States. The first time for him to be in Beijing, he asked me a question like, "Oh, I saw police in Tian Square or in some other streets over there. I found that people are not afraid of their police." For him, it's a different situation because in the U.S., people tend to keep a distance from the presence of a police. In particular, let's say African Americans, probably you don't want to get involved or get engaged with the police force. But in China, people's impression is different. Experience like if you are close to the presence of police, you feel safer.
Yes,
you feel safer. Is that true, Ma Xing?
I think so. I think it's totally a different situation compared to the States. So, for example, the police, if police there, if like we encounter any problem in the street or we have some other like personal problem need to help, we sometimes often go to the police station and ask them to help us. So I think totally the relationship between us and the police is kind of relation maybe quite difficult to understanding for people who living in, for example, the States or other countries.
Yeah, it will be hard for people outside this country to understand that feeling. Like, yeah, we have this sounds we like to sing when we were a child in China, like every area of China. Like when you find a coin on the street, you should firstly give it to the uncle police. Like it's actually it's the way to express this feeling of the closeness between the police people and us. It feels really comfortable, I think, not the feeling of this like fighting against something, feelings like that. Not like that. It's very comfortable feelings between us. Yeah.
It's also another slogan like if you have any question, you go to the police force, right?
Yeah, that's right.
And for example, when you arrive at home, you lost your key, what do? Call the police.
Call the police.
Come to the rescue. This is a very unique China situation, I guess.
Yeah.
Is that true, Yuan Yuan? I mean, you live in Beijing.
Well, of course, I think the different comparison that you mentioned is very, very true. That in the West, people are seeing a police officer, and the thing is, instantly, like, I cannot breathe. But then when you are in China, when you find a policeman on the street, and you feel safe. And this is very interesting. And I think one of the interesting things which strikes me most is that we have two guests who are from Xinjiang, and Dilraba and Ma Xing, and your English are so good. And
Thank
I mean,
you.
this makes the communication much better. And I think there is a Western media attacks of China for, saying China is wiping out the Uyghur cultural traditions, like the Uyghur identities, like wiping out the Uyghur language. For example, requiring the students to force them to learn Mandarin. I mean, if learning Mandarin is cultural genocide, as they said, then what about every Chinese who has to learn English from kindergarten? This is not a cultural genocide. It's cultural suicide, I would say that. So when people hear you guys talking about your real experience, your true stories in Xinjiang, and people would start to think critically, they'll have interesting conclusions. on the one hand, you need to communicate, and on the other hand, you need to preserve your own cultural traditions. So the question really is how to strike a balance between the two, and the narrative, of course.
I think for
That's
me,
true. That's true.
Yeah, is that a question?
It's more like a comment, right?
Yeah, but I actually do have a quick question for any of the panelists who want to answer. How do you strike a balance between your culture and maybe, is it difficult for young people in Xinjiang to learn Uyghur or Kazakh or other languages and to maintain that culture, or is it difficult to be able to seek opportunities, because for that obviously Mandarin is very important to be part of the workforce and to be able to find jobs anywhere else in China as well. So is it difficult for young people to retain their culture? Because I think, I'm saying this also because in Pakistan, our official language is English, and a lot of young people are not good at Urdu or the local languages, and we find it very hard to incentivize this. There seems to be no reason why people would be good at their local languages. So this is something, if I'm able to clarify my query.
I think it varies from different to different person. I think it depends on what kind of situation you are in. Maybe if you want to learn some culture, if you want to learn some language, you will take whatever it takes to learn it and make it improved. If you don't want to get improved, or you don't want to get to know this culture or language, there's no one there can push you to do anything. I think learning culture, learning language is something that you do it consciously. And of course, family members matter. I think family members can influence you in a lot of ways. Like my father is a translator. He translates Chinese into Uyghur, and he translates Uyghur into Chinese. And he taught me a lot about language learning. And through language learning, people learn a lot, like not just the language itself, it's the way people think, it's the way you see the world, and it's not just the language itself. And I think for people around me, I studied in Chinese school. We have separate different kinds of school. I've been learning in Chinese class, like Chinese teachers teach me, and I will learn English. And at school, I talk with my parents with my mother tongue. And it never influenced any language. I can speak my mother tongue fluently. And my husband is an Uyghur. And of course, I taught my daughter Uyghur language and also culture, but it never influenced me like another language, Chinese, English, or whatever it comes to be in the future. I'm open to this culture. I think that's the benefits that I've been learning Chinese and English, that this so many years is the benefits that it gave me the attitudes to be open to the new culture and anything that is new in the future for me. So I'm very thankful. Yes, I'm very thankful to my parents that they taught me this attitudes to be open to the new culture and to be open at the new things. Yeah.
A stupid follow-up question, Marcin or dear Rabbi. Anyone forced you to learn Chinese?
Nobody. No, never.
I don't think so.
No one can force me to do anything.
This is a misconception. No.
No one, even my parents
can't
just
force me to do anything. A lot of people tell me that
anything.
people in Xinjiang are being forced to learn Chinese, and they're being forced to. So this is a real. It's an important question for the audience.
Yeah, I read the things on the Western media, for example, like people forced to learn the Mandarin. But for me, like I grew up in a very multi-ethnic family, so there's probably 5-6 ethnic groups across my 3 generation. I'm the 3rd generation. So while I grew up, if I want to communicate with the different people, so I have to speak Mandarin, because we have people who speak Kazakh, we have speak Uyghur, and we have speak Kazakh. If I want to be close to them, there have to be a common language, and Mandarin definitely should be. And I don't think there anything should be called first on this question, because if you want to find a better job in the job market in China, just like any other large size countries, it's I think the most important, the very basic skills that you have to speak is the language. And only if you speak the language that it will somehow help you to get either a job or better education for your kids. So I think the question itself, there's some misconceptions behind.
just like people, Chinese kids are learning English, like no one forced them to learn English because, learning English is like opening another door or window to see the outside world. Or, when you graduate from the school, probably it's easier for you to find a better job. I mean, speaking Chinese also is necessary. If you, for example, you go to Shanghai or Beijing, Urumqi to find a job, probably it's that because that's a common language, right?
Yeah.
And so let's go a little bit beyond that. If you look at today's media, in particular Western media, we're talking about, like there's a story, there's ongoing convention, UN convention today or yesterday, depending on different location of their, there's a resolution proposed by different countries. If you look at the Western media, like 36 countries or 39 countries criticize China over Xinjiang and Hong Kong, but seldom, very few of them would mention that actually like 50, 70 countries support China's policy in Xinjiang. So Yun, I know you are in the media, you are doing the job. Like, are you surprised? And with the the way they present the story to their readers, viewers, or listeners. And also, interestingly, I noticed that, all those countries who criticize or attack the Chinese Xinjiang policy, they are non-Muslim countries. Instead, interestingly, those countries who support Chinese policy in Xinjiang, often they are Muslim countries.
Well, that's a very, very interesting observation. So you mentioned that, so now the question really boils down to why non-Muslim countries have a problem with China while the real Muslim nations don't, right? So I recently interviewed a professor from Harvard University, and his name is Steve Kelman, and he wittingly said something like this: the only Muslims in the world the US likes are the Muslims in Xinjiang. Muslims in the Arab world, the US Secretary of State doesn't really care any of them. And Pompeo is anti-Muslim, but he loves Xinjiang Muslims. And it seems a little weird to me. Well, I'm saying we all know it's not something weird. It's just something hypocritical, right? Because, attacking China and destabilizing China or splitting China are perceived by many in Washington to be in the interests of the US. So that's why probably it is so busily involved in, taking China down by using all those accusations, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Well, Mr. Said, if you look at the US policy toward China, not only, say, in different regions, they have an issue. They are picking up a fight with China over not only Xinjiang, but also, like I said, Tibet, Hong Kong, Taiwan, Huawei, a series of issues. So, help us understand the big picture. What is the U.S. doing with China?
Great question. That's a very interesting topic. 13th November 1991, New York Times. The article was "Breaking China Apart." This is a Cold War mentality that is not new, which is what we have to understand. This is just a revival of the mentality which was already there. It was already in the system. It was already in the think tanks in Washington. Breaking China Apart, 1991 in the New York Times, this was published. And the article says that if China does not follow the US-based world order, the United States will play the Xinjiang card, quote unquote. The Xinjiang card. So the United States policy all over the world of regime change has been something which they have applied, whether it's the Middle East, whether it's Latin America, whether it's Asia. And unfortunately, that policy of regime change, while the United States has declared that they have ended that policy, it seems that they have just changed the manifestation of how it is applied through information warfare. And the pressure points of countries are exploited. The fault lines and they see that Xinjiang or Hong Kong or Tibet or Taiwan, which are of course integral parts of the People's Republic of China, are areas which can be used to apply pressure to China to conform to Washington's wishes. And that's why we see, if you look at the statements coming from Mr. Pompeo or President Trump, now they have increasingly started to target the Communist Party of China, which is the soul of the Chinese people and the People's Republic of China, which is the social fabric of China. So they are now targeting the party. And they are trying to distinguish between the people of China and the party, the Communist Party of China. So they say that the people of China, we are with you. You are being oppressed, but the Communist Party, you are the real enemy. But they don't understand that the largest political party of the world, with members of over 90 million people, is the CPC, which is representative of the People's Republic of China and the people of China. So that is what is going on. And another important issue is that no other institution but the IMF and the World Bank have predicted that by 2030, the Chinese economy will be the #1 largest economy in the world. And we see that this is basically to contain China economically, to put pressure on Chinese companies, to make the Belt and Road Initiative, which is assisting developing countries. Just in the past 3 months in Pakistan, we have had $11 billion of investment despite the COVID pandemic. The Belt and Road Initiative is being made controversial. Hong Kong, Huawei. We see that the Chinese aim of poverty alleviation, the Chinese aim of giving the people of China a good standard of living, which is their main aim, is being misconstrued, and misinformation is being spread that China wants world domination. But we have to look at history at this point, because when some countries say and talk of new colonialism, they have to understand that the biggest victim of colonialism was China. The 100 years of humiliation were on the hands of Japanese, on the hands of Germany, on the hands of French. China was being colonized for 100 years. And the Opium Wars, and we all know the history. So how can a country which has suffered humiliation and colonization for 100 years be wanting to colonize? So this is the context, and I see that this big power competition will deteriorate, and it will become more aggressive as we approach towards November.
Well, Dr. Wang Jiang, I know you are a native, you are from Xinjiang. So following the comments by Mr. Saeed, the U.S., we observe that there's a deep anxiety somehow with the continuous rise of China. The U.S. predominance around the world somehow will be replaced by China. So they need to do something to stop or sabotage the continuous rise of China. What's your observation? And what should China do to respond to that kind of anxiety in Washington?
Yes, just follow up the speakers. And the U.S., just as Saeed mentioned, on the New York Times in the early 90s, there is an article about the Xinjiang, about the spring part of the China. From academic point of view, in the year of 2003, and in U.S. there is a academic research project called the Xinjiang Project, which is talking about the Uyghur independence and also bring the Xinjiang become like an independent state, which is become sort of like the central soul of the independent of the modern Uyghur movement. And it is very obviously the U.S. government is behind that for years, for decades. And the Xinjiang is become sort of like weakening point or breaking point of the U.S. to China policy. And this right now, with the situations changing, international situations changing, and as you mentioned, the U.S. freed up about the rising of China, and they think to use that card, use that opportunity to criticize what we do, the counterterrorism and other issues, the human rights issues in Xinjiang. But actually, I would like to say, since my study is focusing on the international security and the counterterrorism issue, just 3 and 4 years ago, and we have quite a lot of communication and talks with the U.S. not only with the researcher, but also with the U.S. government. So they know exactly what's happening in Xinjiang. They know very clear about the counterterrorism issues here. And if you're only looking about the Uyghur, some of the Uyghurs looking into they are looking into the independence. It's really hard to explain why some of the terrorism from Xinjiang ending up in Pakistan, in Afghanistan, and ending up in some other hot zone. So they know exactly, very clear, it is part of international counterterrorism issue, but for the policy reason, and they try to use that to criticize and to try to attack China right now.
Well, if you look at the U.S. policies and also the messages from their media, from the NGO, from the think tank, it looks to me it's like a disinformation campaign about Xinjiang. For example, they talk about like 1 million Uyghurs being detained in the concentration camp, or 3 million, 2 million, 3 million. They don't know the exact number, or they can't give an exact number. And they are talking about modern day concentration camp. This is just impossible. How can you detain 3 million people over there in Xinjiang? Things like that. Of course, they talk about the sterilization, they talk about forced labor, and etc. Under such a disinformation campaign, of course, it all started with what you mentioned about anti-terrorism approaches, anti-terrorism practice. For example, policies in China is really about more focusing on improving people's living standard, more opportunities for young people to learn the law, to learn the language, to acquire skill, and then they can start a new life, a new career. So there will be a huge reduction of extremism or terrorism in Xinjiang, in the border region. But if you look at the U.S. approach, or largely Western approach, is really about using drones to kill people. Press the button, people die, and thousands of miles away, sometimes at a wedding ceremony, innocent people were killed. Should we just copy the U.S. approach?
Of course not, and I think we are actually find a new way. There's a new approach to deal with that, and whatever behind that ideologically and also for the economic reason, and we try to find some of the deeper ruined causes for the counterterrorism issue, or whatever people say it would be the security issue. So I think we actually find a new way here, and for the Western world, it's just a war.
Is the Chinese way working?
I think it's working. We can ask the guests from the Urumqi, the situation. We suffered terrorism issues like decades, and also we suffered from the pandemic, 2 waves in Xinjiang. And so what's really look like, what's a real situation in Xinjiang on the street?
Well, obviously it's safe. We got the answer. Free and safe. Also, question for our Iranian guest, Mr. Nadari. From your perspective, why there is a repeated attack against China over Xinjiang? The million Uyghur people being detained, and all kinds of false information about Xinjiang.
Well, never underestimate jealousy and insecurity. When you feel jealous and insecure, you will do everything to bring down your opponent, your rival. And now in this case, it is China. I mean, look at the way China is treating its, not just the people of Xinjiang, but the whole country. They come up with the accusations that this is a racist country. Look, if this is a racist country, it will select certain provinces to educate and develop them, and then it will sideline those that are not in good terms with the central government. China is not doing that. China doesn't care if the people of Xinjiang are Jews, Muslims, or Christians. China looks at Xinjiang as part and parcel of the whole nation. That's why the educational programs, the development programs are also ongoing despite the ongoing pandemic. I mean, if this is not an all-inclusive nation, I don't know what is. But look at other countries. When they don't feel safe and when they want to sideline a certain minority group, they don't develop that part of the country. That is happening in many places across the globe. That proves beyond any doubt, first and foremost, that China is not a racist nation. It sees the whole nation as one and part and parcel of each other. It sees the nation as a nation state. And as I told you, the Xinjiang people could have happened to be Jews. It would have never changed the policy in Beijing with regard to their development and growth. And that is precisely what is going on. And look, the way that Americans, some Western countries are trying to treat the way China is developing Xinjiang. They don't feel comfortable with the fact that China is rising, but peacefully and fairly, with regard to its domestic issues and internationally. At the same time, they would love to turn the international focus away from them with regard to what they have done to the Muslim world. I mean, just ask this fair question from the US government, at least US government. If you do really care about the well-being of Muslim people, why on earth did you turn so many Muslim nations into failed states under the pretext of fighting terrorism and extremism? Look, you turned Yemen, Syria, Afghanistan, Iraq, and even Libya into failed states, and these countries happen to be Muslims. Now, if you want to prove to the international civil society that you do really care about the people of Xinjiang, why don't you help these failed nations to rebuild themselves? Then after that, you are more than welcome to come and talk to China, sit at the same negotiating tables with the government of China and say, look, I have developed them, I have rebuilt those war-torn countries, and now the last thing in my mind is Xinjiang. But please, if you haven't helped those countries, do not talk about Xinjiang, because you are not fit to preach China or other countries in the region and beyond about fairness, about human rights, about respecting the minority groups and communities, because you have proven beyond any doubt that you are not an honest broker when it comes to international development, when it comes to dialogue and civilization. I mean, the only crime that China has committed with regard to Xinjiang is that it is developing that nation, educating that nation, is trying to eradicate poverty. It is trying to eradicate radicalism and extremism. What is wrong with that? Under the International Development Program of the UN, what is wrong with that kind of program that says, listen, I don't stand the idea that this part of my country should remain, uneducated, underdeveloped. I mean, this is the only crime that Beijing has committed. And they don't like to see that this is not a crime. This is fairness. This is all inclusiveness. This is all about respecting human dignity, human rights, international law, the main development programs and articles of associations of the United Nations and its international development program. I mean, the only weakness I see with regard to the central government in Beijing is that it is very sensitive about its international image. Please don't be so sensitive. Ignore what some Western government tell about you and accuse you of doing, because they want to keep you busy. They want to make sure that you don't have time to think about developing your country and at the same time improving your relations with the international civil society. So why not keep you busy and concerned about the situation and the lies in Xinjiang? We saw with our own eyes how these people are so educated. They have traveled inside the country, they have traveled to so many other countries, they have educated them, and if they didn't feel safe, if they didn't feel that they are not being treated fairly, just like the rest of the nation in China, like the Han people, I mean, they would have never come back. I mean, you should be crazy to come back to a community that you know that you are not going to be treated fairly, that you will not have job opportunities, equal job opportunities, that they are going to put you in concentration camps. I mean, these people are educated people. They have seen the world, but they decided to come back to Xinjiang. Why? Because there is fair progress and opportunity for each and every one of them. And by the way, there is a woman over there also talking about his community. So there are equal opportunities for both men and women in Xinjiang. And that is what America doesn't like to hear. I think the best thing China can do right now is to weaponize its media, its information campaign, and let the whole world know what is going on, not just in Xinjiang, but across the country. Because look, many people don't even know where China is, let alone Xinjiang. Many people are just Chinese town in London. I lived there for 20 years. They don't have any idea what is the culture in China, what is the Han, you know, the people of Han, how do they think, where are they, what are they doing. At the same time, I'm asking about Xinjiang and Uyghur community. They don't know these people. So what China needs to do is continue to keep this, you know, information campaign and its transparency to make sure that when one person walks on in the Oxford Street in London, knows exactly what is really going on in China, then they will never ever believe the fake string media outlets, and they will know that they are being lied to for political reasons. America is not going to continue its false and fake news campaign against China like this forever. Soon, through these programs and many other initiatives that the Chinese government is taking right now, they will come to their senses. They will realize that China does mean good, not just for its own people, but for the international community. Any doubters should look and ask questions from those who are behind the Road and Belt and Road Initiative. China is not only developing itself, it is also sharing its progress and growth with the rest of the international community. What is wrong with that?
Mm-hmm. Wonderful point. I want Zun, I know you want to comment on that.
Yes, I'll
Go
make
ahead,
a
please. Yeah.
short comment, because actually a lot of what your guests have said resonates with how I personally feel about what's happening in Xinjiang. I think people who haven't suffered the consequences of letting the problem of separatism, extremism, and certain mindsets fester don't know what it's like if things get much worse. So as a Pakistani, I think we know what it's like when CIA-sanctioned drone strikes are killing 40% children even. And this is just collateral damage. And I know that the term invisible war is not acceptable in the United States anymore, but the truth is that the suffering of people in Iraq, Syria, Yemen, Libya, Afghanistan, Pakistan, the Muslim world in general has been invisible. So my point is that this is true, that actually it's not the Muslims that they care about, but it is just to delegitimize and discredit China and to create a misperception in countries that actually have a lot to gain from China's rise and increased interest in the region. So I think definitely the fact that the United States is using Xinjiang as a card, like Mustafa mentioned, it's just one more way to discredit and supposedly delegitimize China. And I don't think it will work, but it's true that the Western mainstream narrative is widely consumed by the world over. So it does matter what they say, but I think this narrative is short-lived because we know what the United States is guilty of. And the other thing that I really want to say is that as a Pakistani, as someone who we have suffered firsthand for years, the consequences of not being able to target these issues. And when you look at the Shanghai Cooperation Organization's mandate, the idea is to eliminate, to target, to address separatism, extremism, and terrorism in a way that is sustainable. Is it sustainable to go to wars and to destroy and ravage cities and countries? And what is the consequence of that? But it is perhaps sustainable to understand that we need to provide opportunities, we need to provide infrastructure, we need to provide a holistic solution for the issues that we face as a region. And I truly think that what China has done has made Xinjiang safer. And what Pakistan, Afghanistan, and other countries in the region are doing, maybe we need to take some necessary measures because the issue got out of hand, but this is not the solution. this is just addressing the symptoms, and the solution is what China is doing in Xinjiang. So I do think we need to understand better what China is doing. We need to be able to implement such policies. We need to be able to provide opportunities, and we need to know that people are not bad. They have experiences that turn them into, maybe they think the system is wrong. And the idea is to really understand, give them opportunities, give them an education, and give them something more positive to look forward to. So I agree with what your panelists said, and I think we really need a peaceful, a stable, a sustainable way forward. And the SCO, the BRI, China in general manifests that. So I hope that your stories can come out and more people can really understand, because I know what it's like to be on the streets of New York and hide the fact that I'm a Muslim. Or my 15-year-old brother being stopped at JFK airport and asked if he took military training. You know, like these misconceptions really affect normal people. And the more we talk about this and the more impact we experience of certain policies, the more stability we experience, I think the narrative can eventually, gradually change for good. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you, Zoon. Well, before we conclude this wonderful discussion, I want to have your last words about the whole, your impression, your perception after all this discussion. Shall we start with our guests in Xinjiang? Dioraba, anything to say?
Thank you. I think it's really an honor to be with this group chanting, video chanting. After I heard all of you talking about those things that people talking about Xinjiang, and I think it's totally true, and I don't know how to express this. Maybe I don't know that much of those political stuff, but only thing I know is I think my hometown is a city. Urumqi is a city that is a combination of both tradition and modernization. I think it is the way that it looks perfect for me, both traditional way and modernization, and it can only come true when everyone is going to be more open to this new culture and be open. The attitude is openly to everything, not closed down. I think now it has turned into an open attitude city, and if that's the expression, if that's a correct expression.
Stay positive, stay
yes,
open.
Stay positive. I think it's turning to the path of positive vibe, I can say. So I'm enjoying the life here, and I think I want people to know that people here, there are a lot of people in this world, and people can choose their lifestyle. Of course, that's your choice, but if your lifestyle affects other people and make other people uncomfortable, and your lifestyle makes you like, maybe your lifestyle cannot make you be better in the future, just on the other way, on the contrary. From my understanding. And I think that's a wrong lifestyle. You need to throw it away and get into another new lifestyle, and a family around, and they need to be there to help you to go through this. And I think that's what I'm understanding, and that's what's happening right now. So that's what I want to say.
Thank you, Dioraba. And Maxing?
Sure. I think it's so great that we can have this type of very open conversation on this somehow people think very sensitive issue of Xinjiang. And for me, I would like to add that I think in the Western side, my friends and also the people who read the Western media only say that about the anti-terrorism policies recently in Xinjiang in the past year, but people didn't say that people have been suffered from the terrorism or extremists over the past decade. So I think that's the one thing I think people should, if you have the interest of Xinjiang, that you should be interested not only about the current policy, but also about the modern and contemporary history of these places. And secondly, I would like to add is that I think people, as many panelists have mentioned, that the terrorism, extremism, and anti-policy is not a very unique things that only happen in Xinjiang or in China. It's a very global issue that we're facing globally. And so I think people pay too much attention on Xinjiang, and we should normalize Xinjiang, like people who coming from here to speak and kind of thinking Xinjiang just as a normal places. Thank you.
Thank you, Maxing. And Hao Tian?
Well, I think we do have many stereotypes and rumors of Xinjiang, not only from China, the rest of China, but also the rest of the world. Actually, from my own parents, before I set out, my mom told me, it's so dangerous. Why do you choose Xinjiang as the destination for volunteering? And also
misconception or misperception over there.
Exactly. And also a few days ago, one of my friends in Kazakhstan asked me, are you Chinese guy just discriminating Kazakh people or hating them? So I think that's...
You are sitting together now?
Yeah, exactly. We're chatting, we're playing together, and I think we're supposed to hold more activities, forums like that to bring the image, the true image or the true solidarity and prosperity of our Xinjiang people to the whole world and let them know the real situation here. I think that's our duty to bring this true information to the whole world, to the international community.
Thank you. Mr. Saeed, last words?
Yes, I think that I really agree with the three panelists in Urumqi that Xinjiang has successfully overcome a serious problem of terrorism. And in fact, the regional countries and countries like Pakistan and all other countries which have a problem of terrorism should learn how Xinjiang successfully has eliminated extremism and terrorism. And for over 3.5 years, there have been no single incidents of terrorism. And I remember going to Xinjiang many years ago, and in the evening they said, no, it's not safe to go. And now when I went the last time, my friends in Urumqi, the local people, they took me out, and I came back very late at night, and it was buzzing, and it was happy, and it was a great evening, and people were having a great time. So Xinjiang has successfully de-radicalized and eliminated extremism. So that is a model of development that other countries need to learn from, and also see that after the defeating terrorism, how Xinjiang has instilled harmony amongst the different ethnicities and established peaceful coexistence. However, the most important challenge is to get that story out and to tell that story to the people of the world.
Thank you, Mr. Saeed. And Yuan Yuan?
Well, one word. Next time, it would be very interesting if you could have some guests from the Western nations or some Western media, and to listen to the real and true stories from people in Xinjiang, not the Uyghur in Turkey or Kazakhstan, but people from Xinjiang.
That's a good point. The things like whether they listen, right? You have stories to tell. Next time, thank you for the suggestion. Next time we will make sure to have a Western guest here. And Wang Jiang?
Oh, yeah. Yes. Since I'm from Xinjiang, so some of the comments and also a short story I would like to share with you guys. First of all, it's about since we mentioned earlier, there's quite a lot like police officer on the street in Xinjiang, but people sometimes just confuse. Some of them, or many of them, they are just a community support officer. In Chinese, we say Fujing. We not say they are really the police officer. They are the only support the community to help. They have a very limited power to deal with the crime, but they were there just to help the community. And another story I want to share, since people talking about the language, is a few years back, I'm in Xinjiang spending my summer holiday, and I decided to join a French class. There's 10 students and one of the professor. I'm the only one, actually, the background from the Han Chinese. So none of the students are Uyghurs, and one of the professors are Uyghur. They even give me discount because I'm the only Han Chinese.
Wow.
So I mean, if you want really like to kill a culture, to discriminate the culture, so why you decide to like the French? I mean, study like people study there. So for those Uyghur students, I think they not only like learning, they speak Greek Chinese, they speak Greek English, and also they study to Uyghur and they started learning French. So, I mean, the language here is very crucial, as some of the guests mentioned before, very crucial to help them getting a better future and get competitive in the job market. So I think there's just a pointless. I mean, some of the Western media to criticize China, like the Uyghur people to learning our common language in China.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Thank you for the story. Zoon, any last words?
I just want to say that I really think if more stories can come out of Xinjiang, and eventually if countries in the region who are facing issues that Xinjiang has faced in the past, if those countries are able to implement policies similar, we will be in a more peaceful, happier, and prosperous world and region. So I really hope that the narrative can shift and more people can benefit from this holistic solution, holistic way forward. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Mr. Nadari?
Well, we are not living in a perfect universe. I mean, many countries make mistakes. China is not perfect, just like any other country. China should continue to eradicate poverty in Xinjiang and elsewhere, and at the same time educate its people. It doesn't matter if they are Chinese, they are Chinese Han, they are Uyghur Han. It just makes no difference. China should do that. But if it makes mistakes along the way, we shouldn't panic. We should only panic if China stops taking action, stops eradicating poverty, stops educating its people, minority groups, not just in Xinjiang, but across the nation. And it stops, it's fruitful win-win cooperation with the rest of the international civil society. That is when we should hold China to account, but not when it is busy trying to eradicate poverty and educating its people, its minorities. And it is free to make any mistakes because, as I told you, we are not living in a perfect universe. Many other countries are also making similar mistakes, and China is not an exception. But please do continue your eradication of poverty program and make sure that all your people have equal opportunities when it comes to jobs and development and, of course, education. That's what we expect from China, which is rising by now, and it should be encouraged to continue.
Mr. Jume, I have 10 seconds. 10 seconds. One last thing I want to say. I also think that the diversity of Muslims and Muslim culture in China is something that people outside don't know as much as they should. And I think that the problem, like when people criticize Xinjiang, they're making it about Muslims and as if China is intolerant. But actually, if there can be more reporting coming out of China about Muslims, Islam, the number of mosques, and how much Chinese people really respect all religions, including Islam, that can play a very positive role.
That's a good point. Thank you, Zoon. With that, we're coming to the end of today's discussion. Many thanks to our guests. Thank you for your time and your sharing, your insights with us. And also many thanks to our viewers online around the world. So see you next time. Take care.
Thanks.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.